Please, Riley. Nana really needs you right now. She's not feeling well at all." My mother's voice crackled through the phone, heavy with what I would later recognize as calculated deception. I stood in my Chicago apartment, surrounded by carefully packed luggage for our upcoming family cruise, watching my excitement deflate like a punctured balloon. "Of course I'll stay," I replied without hesitation, my heart already shifting from vacation mode to crisis management. "The cruise isn't important if Nana needs help." Those words would return to haunt me just hours later, each syllable a sharp reminder of my own naive trust. My name is Riley Chin, and I'm 32 years old. Throughout my life, I've worn the mantle of the responsible daughter like a second skin, always ready to drop everything when family called. That unwavering dedication was about to be tested in ways I never imagined. The cruise had been months in the making, our first real family vacation in years. The group was supposed to include me, my parents, my younger sister Olivia, and several other relatives. I'd meticulously planned my time off from the consulting firm where I worked, bought new summer clothes, and even splurged on some expensive sunscreen. But family emergencies don't care about carefully laid plans, or at least that's what I believed at the time. That evening, as I navigated rush hour traffic toward the hospital, my phone buzzed with a notification. Olivia had posted on Instagram, and my world tilted on its axis as I stared at the image. My entire family on the cruise ship, champagne glasses raised in celebration. The caption read, "Best vacation ever. So blessed to have such an amazing family." I pulled into a parking lot, my hands trembling as I zoomed in on the photo. There they were, Mom, Dad, Olivia, my aunts and uncles, all grinning broadly on the deck of the ship, the setting sun painting them in golden light. They had lied to me. They had deliberately excluded me from the family vacation, using my beloved grandmother as a cruel prop in their deception. When I finally arrived at the hospital, the truth continued to unravel. There was no record of my grandmother being admitted. My calls to my parents went straight to voicemail, and within minutes of my seeing her post, Olivia had blocked me on every social media platform. The betrayal felt like a physical blow, as if someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it burst. I drove to Nana's house in a daze, tears blurring the familiar streets of my childhood. To my surprise, her lights were on, and when I knocked, she opened the door looking perfectly healthy and more than a little confused to see me in such a state. "Riley, what's wrong, sweetheart?" Nana asked, pulling me into a warm embrace. The familiar scent of her jasmine perfume brought fresh tears to my eyes. As we sat in her cozy living room, surrounded by decades of family photos that now seemed to mock me, the truth came pouring out, the cruise, the lies, the social media posts that had shattered my world. "I don't understand," I said, wiping my eyes with a tissue from the box she'd placed between us. "Why would they do this to me? Why lie about you being sick?" Nana's face darkened with disappointment, the kind that comes from witnessing a betrayal you'd long suspected but hoped would never materialize. She had always treated Olivia and me equally, but my parents were a different story. Growing up in Chicago's suburbs, I had watched them consistently favor my sister. When Olivia wanted voice lessons, they found the money. When I needed help with graduate school tuition, I had to take out loans. I thought about all the times I'd visited Nana over the years, helping her with groceries, taking her to doctor's appointments, or just sitting together, looking through old photo albums. Olivia rarely visited unless she needed something, usually money, yet somehow she remained the golden child in our parents' eyes. "Your mother called me last week," Nana revealed, her voice tight with barely contained anger. "She asked me to play along if you came by, to pretend I had been in the hospital." I refused, of course. I had no idea they would actually go through with this scheme. The cruise tickets hadn't been cheap, nearly $3,000 per person for a 10-day Caribbean adventure. I'd saved for months to afford mine, picking up extra consulting projects and skipping my annual spa weekend with friends. Now, sitting in Nana's living room with the weight of betrayal pressing down on me, I wondered if they had planned to exclude me all along. Had my ticket money somehow funded their upgraded cabins or shore excursions? "You know what hurts the most?" I said, staring at the family photo on Nana's mantle, taken last Christmas when we'd all pretended to be the perfect family. They didn't even need an elaborate excuse. They could have just told me they didn't want me there. Instead, they used you, knowing how much I care about you, to manipulate me. Nana reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong for someone my parents had just claimed was at death's door. "Sometimes people show you exactly who they are, even when they think they're hiding it," she said, wisdom and anger mingling in her voice. "The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge?" I looked up at her, seeing something fierce and determined in her eyes. Little did I know, Nana had been watching our family dynamics more closely than any of us realized, and she had plans of her own. My phone buzzed again, this time with a group text from my cousin Maya, who didn't know I'd been excluded from the cruise. She had meant to send vacation photos to everyone in the family group chat, not realizing I wasn't supposed to see them. My heart clenched as I scrolled through the images, Olivia wearing the designer sundress I had helped her pick out, my parents lounging by the infinity pool with tropical cocktails, the whole family gathered for a formal dinner in the ship's grand dining room. But what caught my eye was my mother's emerald necklace, the one Nana had given her years ago. It was meant to be passed down to both her daughters when they turned 35. "She gave it to Olivia already, didn't she?" I asked, showing Nana the photo. "Even though I'm the older one, even though we were supposed to share it." Nana leaned forward to look at the picture, her expression hardening like granite. "That necklace has been in our family for 4 generations," she said quietly. "Your great-grandmother brought it from Hong Kong, and it was meant to unite, not divide." Then she revealed something that made my blood run cold. The cruise hadn't been paid for with my parents' money at all. 2 months ago, she had given them $25,000 to plan a family vacation, explicitly stating it was for all of us. Instead, they had used my portion to upgrade their own cabins and book extra excursions. The betrayal had layers, like an onion made of lies, each one more pungent than the last. "I've been watching," Nana continued, her voice heavy with disappointment. "For years, I've seen how they treat you differently. I kept hoping they would change, that they would realize what they were doing. But this," she stood up and walked to her antique secretary desk, pulling out a thick manila envelope. "I wasn't going to show you this yet, but you need to know. I've been keeping records. Every time they've favored Olivia, every time they've taken advantage of your kindness, every penny they've spent differently between you two." Inside the envelope were bank statements, photos, emails, and handwritten notes spanning years. My hands trembled as I read through them, the truth laid bare in black and white. The pattern of favoritism wasn't just in my head. It had been calculated, consistent, and deliberate. "But why?" I whispered, the weight of years of gaslighting and denial crashing down around me. Why did they always make me feel like I was imagining it, like I was being too sensitive or jealous? Nana's eyes flashed with a determination I'd never seen before. "Because that's what manipulators do, Riley. They try to make you doubt yourself when they know they're wrong, but not anymore." She pulled another document from the envelope, this one newer, with official-looking seals. Not after what I discovered last month. As I took the paper from her hands, I had no idea that this moment would be the turning point, not just in my relationship with my family, but in my entire life. The cruise ship carrying my family was somewhere in the Caribbean, but the real storm was brewing right here in Nana's living room, and I was about to become its eye. The document in my hands was a trust agreement, dated 30 years ago. My maternal grandfather, who had built a successful import-export business in Chicago's bustling Chinatown, had left behind a substantial fortune before passing away. The trust was meant to be divided equally between all his grandchildren when they turned 35. My portion alone was worth over $3 million. But as I flipped through the accompanying bank statements, a sick feeling grew in my stomach. Regular withdrawals had been made from the trust over the years, money that had funded Olivia's voice lessons, her semester abroad in Paris, her Ivy League education, and even her lavish wedding last spring. All of it had been taken from what was supposed to be my share. "They've been stealing from you since you were 5, Nana explained, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "Your mother convinced the trustee, her brother Stephen, to give her early access to your portion. She claimed it was for your benefit, but as you can see," she gestured at the damning paper trail before us. I grabbed my laptop from my bag, logging into my student loan account. The $87,000 I still owed for my MBA felt like a slap in the face. All those nights, I'd worked late at the consulting firm, trying to make extra payments, while my own trust fund had been financing Olivia's dreams. The cruise money was the final test, Nana continued, pulling out her reading glasses to examine a recent bank statement. I knew about some of the withdrawals, but I didn't understand the full scope until last month. When I confronted your mother, she swore they'd make it right. That's why I gave them the vacation money. I wanted to see if they would finally do the right thing. And they failed spectacularly, I said, my voice hollow. Just then, my phone lit up with a text from Olivia. Just saw your pathetic scene at the hospital. Why do you always have to ruin everything? Mom and Dad were right. You're just jealous because I actually did something with my life while you played it safe. Get over yourself. I showed the message to Nana, who snorted in disgust. Safe? You built your career from scratch while she spent your inheritance pretending to be a songwriter in Nashville. She reached for another folder in her desk. But here's what they don't know. I've spent the last month working with our family attorney. Your Uncle Stephen came clean about everything last week. The new documents she showed me revealed an even darker truth. My parents hadn't just spent my trust fund on Olivia, they'd been embezzling money for themselves too. The cruise was just the latest example of their ongoing scheme. They had created fake educational expenses, fabricated medical bills, and even started a shell company in my name to siphon money from the trust. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked Nana, trying to process the magnitude of their betrayal. Because I needed proof that couldn't be explained away, she replied, her jaw set firmly. Your mother's very good at making things look legitimate on paper, but she made a mistake with the cruise money. She left a paper trail that proved intentional deception. That, combined with Stephen's testimony and my documentation, gives us everything we need. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an email from Uncle Stephen Riley. I can't keep quiet anymore. What they did with the cruise money was the last straw. I've attached documentation of every withdrawal they made from your trust. I'm so sorry. I should have stopped them years ago. The attached files painted a picture of systematic theft spanning decades. Each withdrawal had been carefully disguised as an investment in my future, but the money had gone straight into accounts controlled by my parents or Olivia. Looking at the numbers made me feel sick, not just because of the amount stolen, but because of what it represented. Every dollar was a reminder that my own parents had seen me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. There's more, Nana said quietly, pulling out one final document. I've updated my will. The family business holdings, my personal assets, everything. It's all going to you. I stared at her, stunned. But what about Olivia? Olivia has already received her share, and yours, through their schemes. It's time for the scales to balance. She squeezed my hand. But Riley, you need to be prepared. When they find out about this, they're going to try to discredit you. They'll say you manipulated me, that you're trying to steal Olivia's inheritance. We need to move quickly. On my phone, the cruise photos kept coming in from unsuspecting relatives. Each smiling face now looked like a mask, hiding years of calculated betrayal. As the Chicago sunset painted Nana's living room in shades of amber, I realized there was no going back. The comfortable lies of my family life had crumbled, leaving only hard truths in their wake. What do we do now? I asked, feeling both terrified and strangely liberated. Nana's eyes gleamed with determination. Now, my dear, we show them exactly what happens when they underestimate the wrong person. And believe me, they've definitely underestimated both of us. The next morning, I met Uncle Stephen at a quiet dim sum restaurant in Chinatown, far from our family's usual haunts. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his hands trembled slightly as he sipped his tea. The weight of decades of complicity had clearly taken its toll. I brought everything, he said, sliding a leather portfolio across the table. Bank records, transfer authorizations, emails, it's all here. Your parents. He paused, glancing around nervously. They called me 16 times last night after I sent those documents. They're panicking, Riley. I opened the portfolio, the smell of leather mingling with the steam from dumplings being wheeled past our table. The evidence was even more damning than what Nana had shown me. Years of systematic theft laid out in meticulous detail. Each transaction a carefully orchestrated betrayal. Look at this, Stephen said, pointing to a series of recent transfers. They've been moving money to accounts in Singapore. Large amounts, all within the last 3 months. The cruise wasn't just a vacation, it was a test run. They were checking if their passports would raise any flags. My hands froze over the documents. They're planning to run with what's left of both trust funds. He pulled out another paper, This one showing transactions to a series of shell companies. Olivia's been helping them. She's been setting up accounts in her name, moving money around. They've been planning this for months. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone lit up with a text from Olivia. I know what you and Nana are doing. You've always been jealous of me, and now you're trying to ruin everything. Well, guess what? By the time you figure it out, we'll be long gone. Have fun with your pathetic little life. I showed the message to Uncle Stephen, whose face turned ashen. They're moving faster than we thought. We need to act now. He pulled out his phone, rapidly typing a message. I'm contacting the family attorney. With these documents and your sister's text, we can get an emergency injunction to freeze the accounts. But before he could finish, my phone rang. It was Nana, her voice urgent. Riley, they're at the company headquarters right now. Your father's cleaning out his office. Security just called me. I stood up so quickly my chair clattered backward, drawing stares from nearby diners. Can security stop them? I've done better than that, Nana replied, steel in her voice. I've already called the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. They're on their way. But Riley, she paused meaningfully. You need to get down there. Remember what I showed you last night? The paperwork was filed first thing this morning. You're the controlling shareholder now. Uncle Stephen's eyes widened as he heard this through the phone. She made you majority shareholder? That means they don't know yet, I finished, already grabbing my coat. And that's our advantage. We need to get there before they can destroy any evidence. As I rushed toward my car, another text came through from my mother. You ungrateful child. After everything we've sacrificed for you, you'll regret this betrayal. But for the first time in my life, their threats felt empty. The truth had become my shield, and decades of lies were about to come crashing down around them. I pressed the accelerator harder, weaving through Chicago's midday traffic. The family company's headquarters loomed ahead, its glass towers reflecting the spring sunlight like a mirror showing all their deceptions. In my rearview mirror, I saw Uncle Stephen's car following, and behind him, a black SUV that I somehow knew contained federal agents. Years of playing the dutiful daughter, of doubting my own perceptions, of swallowing their lies. It all ended today. I pulled into the parking garage just as my father emerged from the elevator, carrying boxes from his office. Olivia was with him, looking nervous as she glanced around, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. My mother followed, her emerald necklace, the one that should have been shared between her daughters, glinting accusingly in the fluorescent light. They froze when they saw me step out of my car, their faces cycling through surprise, anger, and then something I'd never seen before, fear. What are you doing here? My father demanded, trying to maintain his authoritative CEO voice, but I could hear the tremor beneath it. I walked toward them slowly, my heels clicking against the concrete in a steady rhythm that matched my heartbeat. Behind me, I heard more cars arriving, Uncle Stephen, Nana, the FBI. But in that moment, it was just me facing the three people who had spent my entire life gaslighting me, stealing from me, and making me doubt my own worth. Funny, I said, my voice steady and clear in the underground garage. I was about to ask you the same thing, especially since you're removing items from my company without authorization. Your company? Olivia scoffed, but her voice quavered. What are you talking about? I held up my phone, displaying the ownership documents. Nana transferred her controlling shares to me this morning. As the new majority shareholder, I'm very interested in what's in those boxes you're carrying. Would they happen to contain evidence of what you did with my trust fund? My mother's face went white. Behind me, police cars pulled into the garage, lights flashing silently against the concrete walls. FBI agents emerged from their vehicles, and I saw Nana step out of Uncle Stephen's car, her small frame radiating authority. You don't understand, my mother pleaded, her designer handbag clutched to her chest like armor. Everything we did was for this family. No, I corrected her, feeling a strange calm settle over me. Everything you did was for yourselves and for Olivia, and now you're planning to run away with what's left of my money. I turned to my sister. Did you enjoy the cruise, Olivia? Was it worth it, knowing it was paid for with stolen money? The FBI agents approached as Olivia burst into tears, her carefully applied makeup running down her face. My father tried to pull her away, but an agent stepped between them. Another agent began reading them their rights, the words echoing off the garage walls like a final verdict. Let me explain. My father attempted one last time, his CEO authority crumbling as an agent took the boxes from his hands. "We were protecting you, Riley. You were always so responsible. We knew you could handle yourself." Olivia needed the support more. Support? Uncle Stephen's voice rang out as he joined us. "Is that what you call embezzling millions from your own daughter's trust fund? Creating fake companies to hide the money? Planning to flee the country?" My mother spun toward him, her emerald necklace catching the light. You betrayed us, your own sister." "No," Stephen said firmly. "I betrayed Riley by staying quiet for so long. I'm just trying to make it right." As the agents began searching the boxes, one called out, "We've got financial documents here, shredded files, offshore account numbers." He held up a stack of papers, and what appears to be multiple passports. I watched as my family's carefully constructed facade crumbled. The FBI led my parents toward separate cars, reading them their rights. Olivia stood alone, mascara streaking her cheeks, looking lost without our parents to hide behind. "Riley," she whispered as an agent gently took her arm. "I didn't know. I knew about some of it, but I didn't know everything. They said it was all legal, that you'd never find out. But I did find out," I replied quietly. "And now everyone else will too." Nana came to stand beside me as we watched the federal cars pull away. The boxes from my father's office were being cataloged as evidence, each one containing proof of years of systematic theft and deception. "You know what the saddest part is?" I said to her, watching Olivia being led to a separate car for questioning. "They could have just loved us equally. All of this," I gestured at the scene before us, "was harder than just being fair." Nana squeezed my hand. "Sometimes people create elaborate schemes to justify what they know is wrong. They convinced themselves they were helping Olivia by hurting you. But karma has a way of balancing the scales." As we walked out of the garage into the spring sunshine, reporters were already gathering at the building's entrance. The arrest of a prominent CEO for financial crimes would make headlines, and soon everyone would know the truth about my perfect family. Uncle Stephen approached with the family attorney, holding more documents. The emergency injunction went through. We've frozen all the accounts they hadn't managed to empty yet. And Riley. He paused, looking both relieved and exhausted. "We found something else. Something they were desperately trying to hide in those boxes." I looked at the papers in his hands, not knowing that what I was about to learn would change everything I thought I knew about my family's deception. The truth, it seemed, had even more layers than I imagined. 3 months later, I sat in Nana's garden, watching autumn leaves dance across her koi pond. The documents Uncle Stephen had found that day revealed an even darker truth. My parents had been running a complex money laundering operation through the family company for years. They hadn't just stolen from my trust fund. They'd been helping wealthy clients hide illegal money through a network of shell companies, all while using my identity and credentials without my knowledge. The FBI investigation had uncovered over $50 million in laundered funds. My father now faced federal charges, along with additional civil suits from shareholders. My mother, in a desperate attempt to save herself, had turned state's evidence, revealing a scheme that stretched back decades and implicated several other prominent Chicago business figures. Olivia had made a deal with prosecutors, agreeing to testify in exchange for immunity. She'd moved to Seattle, finally forced to support herself without our parents' financial backing. Her last message to me was a lengthy apology, but some wounds run too deep for simple words to heal. Maybe someday we'd find a way to be sisters again, but for now, the distance felt necessary. "The board meeting went well?" Nana asked, pouring more jasmine tea into my cup. She'd been my rock throughout the chaos of the past months, helping me navigate both the emotional and practical challenges of taking over the family company. "Better than expected," I replied, warming my hands on the delicate porcelain. "We've implemented all the new transparency measures, and the Ethical Investment Committee is up and running. The stock price is finally recovering. Under my leadership, we transformed the company. The new scholarship program for employees' children felt like poetic justice, turning money that had once been used to favor one child over another into an opportunity for dozens of families. The business was thriving, built on integrity rather than deception. Your grandfather would be proud," Nana said, her eyes misting slightly. "Not just of the changes you've made to the company, but of how you've handled everything. He always said money reveals people's true characters." I nodded, thinking of the letter he'd left with the trust documents, words I'd only recently discovered. He'd written about his hopes for his grandchildren, his dream that we'd build on his legacy while maintaining our integrity. Somehow, through all the pain and betrayal, I felt I'd finally fulfilled that dream. "You know," I said, watching a red leaf float across the pond surface, "I never wanted any of this. The company, the money, the responsibility. I just wanted to be treated fairly, to be loved equally." Nana reached over and squeezed my hand, her grip still surprisingly strong. Sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as its greatest challenges. You've turned their betrayal into something positive, something that helps others. That's a kind of magic, Riley. She was right. The company's new direction had created opportunities for dozens of employees and their families. We'd established a foundation to help victims of financial fraud, turning our family's shame into a force for good. Even some of our competitors had begun adopting our transparency policies. The autumn breeze carried the scent of Nana's chrysanthemums, and I thought about that cruise they'd taken without me. It hadn't been the vacation of a lifetime after all. It had been the beginning of their downfall and the start of my new life. Their attempt to exclude me had ultimately led to their own exclusion from the family legacy. I found Olivia's old songwriting notebook in one of the storage rooms, I mentioned, watching a monarch butterfly land on a nearby flower. She actually had talent, you know? If they hadn't spoiled her, hadn't handed her everything, maybe she would have developed it. "That's the true cost of their favoritism," Nana observed wisely. "They hurt both of you, you with their neglect, her with their excess." As the sun began to set over Chicago's skyline, painting the garden in shades of gold and crimson, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The truth had cost me my illusions about family, but it had given me something more valuable: clarity, strength, and the power to break a cycle of toxicity that had poisoned 3 generations. The emerald necklace that had once symbolized my exclusion now sat in a safe, waiting for the day I might have children of my own. When that day came, I would split it into 2 equal pieces, a constant reminder that love, like inheritance, should never be used as a weapon. "You know what, Nana?" I said, smiling as another leaf drifted into the pond, creating ripples that transformed the water's surface. "I think we should plan a vacation. A real one this time, with no lies, no hidden agendas. Just us, enjoying each other's company." Nana's eyes twinkled. "I'd like that, dear. After all, the best journeys are the ones where everyone's invited." Standing in that autumn garden, I realized that while my parents' betrayal had broken my heart, it had also set me free. Sometimes the deepest wounds lead us to our greatest healing, and the darkest betrayals light the way to our brightest futures. My story wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about transformation, about turning pain into purpose, and about building something new from the ashes of what was lost. Story 2, I'm Amalia, and responsibility has been with me ever since I can remember. There was always a lot going on in our small house. My baby sister, who entered our life when I was 10, and my 2 younger brothers running around. "Would you mind changing Sarah's diaper, Amalia, honey?" Mom's voice, worn out from working double shifts, would ring out. I would quickly drop what I was doing to assist. That was the norm for us. Everyone, with the exception of Sarah, contributed in. She was different as soon as she got there. "She is still a baby. Leave her alone," Dad would say to dismiss any worries about her actions. In an attempt to support us all, I watched as my parents worked themselves to the bone. Dad at the building site, Mom is cleaning the house. To keep food on the table and dreams alive in our hearts, they exerted every effort. Being the middle children, my brothers Mike and David were sometimes overlooked in the mix between Sarah's privileges and my obligations. We traded knowing looks across the dinner table when Sarah would throw another tantrum and get her way again. In an effort to escape the pattern of barely making ends meet, I began working as soon as I graduated from high school. Although the neighborhood diner was unglamorous, it was a beginning. Every dime I made went into my college savings jar stashed somewhere in my closet. Late at night, I would count it, hoping to have enough to enroll in community college courses. My managers were aware of my commitment within a year. After I transitioned from waitressing to bookkeeping, my aspirations of attending college became less unrealistic. I enrolled in evening programs, managing employment and studies with a dedication that amazed even me. The fatigue was genuine. I would occasionally nod off while reading my textbooks, only to wake up early for another shift. However, seeing Sarah sleep until noon, skip class whenever she wanted, and get away with it all simply made me more determined to achieve. One night, as I was studying in the kitchen at midnight, Dad cautioned me that I was going to burn myself out. I grinned as I glanced up from my accounting assignment. I'm heading somewhere, maybe. I swear to you, Dad, my college degree gave me access to opportunities I never would have imagined. First National Bank recruited me as a junior analyst, and I put myself into the work with the same tenacity that got me through school. My boss drew me aside after a few months. I've never witnessed someone pick things up so fast, Amalia said. You'll get far here if you keep at this pace. She was not mistaken. While others grumbled about office politics, I was good with statistics and much better with people. I got through them with ease. Perhaps I had learned something valuable from all those years of handling family relationships. Ultimately, my brothers David and Mike, meanwhile, had left home and begun their own lives. Sarah, on the other hand, continued to live her life without consequence at home. She had always done so. When Mom called, she would give me updates that I didn't want to hear. Sarah left around 3 in the morning. She would sigh once more and add, I worry, but you know how she is. Yes, I was aware. I was also aware of the general lack of focus, the parade of boyfriends, and the poor grades. However, it was no longer my issue. Now I had my own place, my own life, and my own objectives. Then came the call that made all the difference. One morning, Sarah's expecting mother made an announcement. The dad has left for Arizona, that he has no interest in it. I tightened my hold on my phone and promised to assist her in raising the child. Naturally, can we do anything else? They would, of course. Even at 18, Sarah remained their beloved baby, even carrying a child of her own. I didn't say anything since I knew what would happen next. Amalia, won't you also assist? Visit us on the weekends. You're really skilled with kids. At that point, I began to come up with a remarkable number of reasons. Client meetings, professional development classes, and urgent job assignments. Anything to avoid caring for yet another child during my little leisure time. During one very stressful phone discussion, Mom exclaimed, I don't understand you anymore. You were really helpful once. I used to be a kid who was forced to help. I corrected her. Now that I'm an adult, I have my own life. However, family. Family is reciprocal. I send you money every month. Where have you gone, Mom? That typically silences them, at least for a while. Sarah's prenatal care was covered by the sizable checks I paid. Baby supplies come next, followed by continuing costs. However, it was never sufficient to gain their acceptance. Lisa informed me over coffee one day that they were disparaging you behind your back, Maya. Saying you've changed, you know. Get chilly. I patiently brew my coffee, while seeing the patterns the cream makes in the dark beverage. Let them speak. In any case, they have never comprehended me. They claim that you lack gratitude, she continued. I gave her a direct glance. Thank you. For what purpose? The honor of caring for their other kids. The chance to raise their grandchild today. At Lisa, I've worked hard for all I own. Everything. That week, he was promoted to senior analyst. Both my pay and the checks I sent home rose once again. However, I maintained my boundaries. No last-minute childcare or babysitting on the weekends. No favors at the last minute. Give me the name Kelly's. Between client meetings and financial reports, I'd been the responsible one long enough. Not that romance was a top concern. Up until James's message appeared on my phone that rainy Tuesday night, I had hardly used my dating app. There was something off about his profile. Perhaps it was the sincere grin or the absence of selfies taken at the gym, without shirts. His message said, I noticed she works in finance. In reality, I work as an investment advisor. Perhaps over coffee, we could bore each other with market jargon. I never imagined I'd have time for the type of connection that developed from that coffee to supper, weekends, and 2 years later. Even after my most trying days, James was able to make me laugh and was understanding of my work schedule. I never thought I'd find someone who understands both compound interest and my terrible jokes, he commented one evening as we strolled around the park. Next came the suggestion. Nothing ostentatious. After a homemade dinner, it's just the two of us at my apartment. My life would be impossible without you. He held out the ring as he said, Get married to me. Before he could complete his question, I said, Yes. The process of introducing him to my family went remarkably well. A little wonder was that Sarah even behaved herself. My folks were ecstatic. Their workaholic daughter was finally starting a family. Mom exclaimed after our first family meal together, "He's amazing, Amalia. Did you notice how wonderful he is with Tommy?" She was referring to my nephew, Sarah's kid, who had in fact developed a quick fancy to James. The wedding was stunning, and the beginning of married life was ideal. James seemed to have always been a part of the family. When we were there, he would spend hours teaching Tommy how to build with blocks or toss a ball. Sarah observed these exchanges with a certain ferocity that was not immediately apparent. She would smile meaningfully at me and remark, "He's going to be such an amazing father. Amalia, you're really fortunate." That was the beginning of the question. From James himself, then from my family. "Isn't it time for him to ask?" Tommy was running about our living room. "Our age isn't decreasing." I would repeatedly explain my stance. "I want us to be absolutely ready. First, we built our own home. Not in this unit. We achieved security and savings. But we're doing fine." He'd counter. "They both do wonderful jobs. What are we waiting for?" For the proper moment, I'd urge one child when we're ready. We decided on that idea. During family get-togethers, I could sense his disappointment. Even though he would say and then stop talking, I would see him staring at Tommy with longing. "Your sister is doing nicely," he would say, occasionally not quite removing the sharpness from his voice. "My sister depends on our parents' retirement funds and resides with them." "That's not what I want for our child," I would respond. Like watching storm clouds develop on a bright day, the tension increased gradually and almost imperceptibly. "Though you convince yourself, it's still a long way off. You know the rain is coming." I was too preoccupied with being promoted. We had a house savings fund, and I had meticulously planned out our 5 years of marriage and spring cleaning. Still required navigating James's mess. He was never good at organizing his half of the closet. I began that Saturday morning like any other, going through old receipts, exercise clothing I had forgotten, and the normal mess that piled up on his shelves. I discovered it at that point. I had never seen a phone like this before. I took it up, feeling sick to my stomach, tucked under his winter jackets. Not his office phone, not his own phone, not even the latch was on it. I opened the mails with trembling hands. Sarah, my younger sister, gave me the first one I saw. "You already can't wait for her to return to work on Saturday, miss. I wish I could hide the hundreds of messages and images. Talk about me. LOL. She has no idea. Always in the office. Her valuable career is all that matters to her." Months passed before the timestamps appeared. I sat on the floor of the closet after my legs failed me, reading one message after another, each one getting worse. Then I noticed it. The telegram that brought my world to a halt. "The baby is unquestionably yours. Today, 12 weeks along, the doctor verified." I don't recall taking the car to my parents' place. Other than the phone in my white-knuckled hand, I don't recall anything. There was Sarah. Naturally. Cartoons on Saturday mornings with Tommy. One large, contented family. What on earth is this? On the coffee table, I tossed the phone. Startled, Tommy looked up, and his mother hurried him to his room to play. Sarah didn't even bat an eyelid. As if to check the weather, she took up the phone and casually browsed through it. "Well, I suppose that's all you have to say now. Are you having an affair with my husband?" She gave a shrug. In fact, I shrugged. "We have fallen in love, Amalia. These things do occur. And now that the kid is on the way, James and I want to tie the knot." As soon as Amalia stops being tough about it, hard, what I was hearing was unbelievable. "I'm being challenging." "Yes," Sarah said, as if she were describing something easy to a young kid. "In any case, you never desired children. Your valuable career is keeping you too busy. A true family is what James needs." I looked to my parents, hoping they would say something to support me, to denounce this treachery. Mom, on the other hand, knelt down beside Sarah and patted her hand. Amalia made an effort to be sensible. "James is excellent with Tommy, who needs a father figure. Additionally, a new baby is on the way." "Reasonable," my voice broke. "There is an affair between my sister and my spouse. Do you also expect me to be sensible?" Dad cleared his throat. "You didn't want kids, then, James and honey. Being a father has always been his dream. Perhaps this is a good thing. How recently did you even prepare his dinner? A good wife would be Sarah." As my family sat there guarding the unassailable, I turned to face them, smug and expecting my husband's child, Sarah. The next wedding is already being planned by Mom. Dad is obviously on their side, but he's avoiding my gaze. A good wife, like your beloved Sarah, who cheats on you and with her sister's husband, I repeated numbly. Sarah gave an eye roll. Amalia, don't be so dramatic. Simply return to your large office and your crucial meetings. Family matters should be left to those who genuinely care about them. The drive home from my parents' house is hardly a memory for me. The world didn't seem real, as if I were witnessing the disintegration of someone else's life rather than my own. James was in the living room, pretending it was just another Saturday, when I walked through our front door. Hello, sweetheart. He came over to give me a hug. His smile, that familiar one. The smile I once adored. I felt sick to my stomach from that smile. Holding up his second phone, I took a step back. Do you want to explain? His face changed in an instant. Confusion at first, followed by recognition and fear. Where did you discover it? While doing the cleaning. You should really look for better places to hide your affair. Amalia, phones. I can clarify. Describe what? The messages, the pictures, or perhaps describe how you conceived my sister. First, he attempted denial, like they all do. It's not. I mean, I didn't, but he must have seen something in my face, because suddenly his whole demeanor changed. The mask dropped completely. All right. Indeed. Sarah and I are together. He lost his temper. What did you expect? You're never home. All you care about is work, work, work. When was the last time we ever had a serious talk about establishing a family? Oh, so this is my fault. You deceived because I desired financial security before having children. You never wanted children? Not really. You always had some excuse. The house, the savings, the appropriate moment. Sarah truly wants a family. She is aware of what matters in life. I was disgusted when I saw this man, this stranger, wearing my husband's face. Loyalty is what matters in life. Basic human decency and honor. But I suppose you and my dear sister don't care about those things. Acting arrogant is not necessary. He grinned. The only reason you're upset is that Sarah is giving me something you wouldn't. The following day, the divorce papers were submitted. It went through fast, since I had records of the encounter. To assist me in leaving the flat, my brothers David and Mike came. The only people who supported me were them. As we packed boxes, Mike said, "We always knew Sarah was spoiled. This is a new low, though." David was unable to even pronounce her name. "I think they're dead," he said. To my brothers, both of them, I couldn't help but hear the updates I didn't want to hear. In a modest ceremony, James and Sarah were married. Naturally, my parents were there, beaming with pride. The baby was born, a female. They relocated to a modest suburban home. Tommy began referring to James as Dad. At one of our monthly dinners, Mike informed me that Mom is always trying to convince us to come see them. Claims that we must reunite as a family. David raised his glass and stated, "We are a family, all three of us. That's sufficient." I nodded, appreciating my brother's devotion. In a society where loyalty didn't appear to matter anymore, there are betrayals that cannot be forgiven, bridges that cannot be repaired, and families that are better off broken for years. We were the only ones who realized that these things exist. My new apartment has marble countertops, floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the city skyline, and enough room to finally put the art collection on display I had always desired. The garage lights shone on the Mercedes parked in my designated space. I had made it just the way I had intended. James and Sarah were having financial difficulties, and my brothers frequently dropped by with gossip and news. In 2 years, they had moved 3 times, each time to a smaller apartment. I didn't care, though. I had stopped caring about their lives until that Tuesday night, when I saw a number on my phone that I had assumed I would never see again. Even though Amalia James is 4 years older than me, I can still recognize her voice, and it makes my stomach turn. "Don't hang up, please. I ought to have." I choose to listen instead, as if he had any right to ask me for anything. He replied, "We need your help. Sarah was involved in an accident. Severely fractured her leg. Fracture of a compound. Despite having surgery, she is unable to move, unable to look after the children. She is also pregnant once again." I pondered whether this was a cosmic joke as I sat there with my phone to my ear. "Someone needs to come get the kids from school. Until I get home from work, keep an eye on them." With the impending arrival of a new baby, Tommy is becoming too large to manage things by himself. He hesitated. We hoped you would be able to assist. What did you think? I sounded weirdly composed. Amalia, they're your nephews. Your household? Right now, Sarah is unable to even go to the restroom by herself. My relatives. I said it again. The sister who had an affair with my spouse, as well as the husband who betrayed me. My family is that. Don't act that way. His voice changed from begging to accusing as he snapped. It's not about us here. It concerns defenseless kids in need of assistance. What makes you so self-centered to give a damn about them? Too self-centered? It nearly made me chuckle. It's impressive that you said it. Here, we're having trouble. He raised his voice. Are you aware of the high cost of children? Just to put food on the table, I'm putting in extra hours. Even a quality apartment is now out of our price range. You're enjoying the good life in your opulent condo and expensive automobile in the meantime. That's what this is all about then. Cash, he responded sourly. Not all of us can concentrate only on our careers. There are those of us who have actual obligations. With all much money and no one else to spend it on except yourself, it must be great, I said icily. It must be nice to have the family you stole and no way to support them. It seems like a true dream realized. The children require parents who did not establish their connection based on treachery. James, goodbye. Before he could return my call, I hung up and blocked his phone. The appearance of my mother's number on my phone was nearly as unwanted as James's had been. Still, I responded. I couldn't quite shake some old habit. Amalia. When Mom wanted anything, she always used that tone in her voice. Sarah has to be discussed. She requires assistance. Did James not call you about her leg? I walked to my living room, resisting the need to end the call right away. I'll tell you what I told him, and he did, indeed. It's not my issue. How come you're so icy? She's your sister. She has 3 kids and is having difficulties. Well, I'll be 3 shortly. The sister who had an affair with my spouse. That's sister. Mom let out a deep sigh. Years have passed since then. You have to get over it, Amalia. We are related. It's funny that family only counts when you need me. We have done our best to assist her. Mom continues to beg for money, but her voice cracks a bit. For everything, even the rent and the children. All of our funds have been spent. We can't continue like this, your father and I. I couldn't contain my laughter. At last, the golden kid is proving too costly to care for. Don't be mean. She is just. She has never mastered it. Mom walked away. To what end? Work. Provide for herself. Accept accountability for her behavior. I wonder why. She simply never stops producing children. Mom exclaimed, at last letting out her displeasure. She refuses to hunt for work. She claims to be too busy with the kids, yet she is constantly in need of money. She seems to be just the kind of person you brought up. I said icily. The princess who was never held accountable. That's not the correct way for you to talk to me. Mom's voice lifted. Your mommy is me. And who is to blame for Sarah's development? He taught her that nothing was ever hers without effort, that she would always be saved by someone. We gave it our all. No, you gave it your best shot. You're phoning me now because feeding the monster you made is too costly. It is your responsibility to support your family. Now, Mom was practically yelling. You've done everything for me, and we've done everything for you. I interrupted. Do you mean helping my sister when she cheated on my husband? Or as if I were selfish for desiring financial stability before starting a family? I have nothing to repay you. Before she could answer, I hung up. 4 years of repressed anger have left my hands trembling. Suddenly, the best retaliation seemed to be the pricey view outside my apartment window. Without their assistance or consent, my life unfolded precisely as I had imagined it would. I was looking over quarterly reports one evening when Mike called. Sarah, you have no idea who attempted to contact me today. The desperation tour was already on the road, as I knew. Bingo asked me to assist with the children and perhaps provide them a loan till they were able to support themselves. As like they had ever been upright in the first place, he snorted. You told her what? David reminded her yesterday that certain betrayals are irreversible, that her treatment of you went beyond simple infidelity. A family was being destroyed. She broke down in tears and accused us of being unkind. That family ought to support other families. He hesitated. She didn't seem overly worried about her family, I reminded her, when she and her spouse were having sex. Gazing at the city lights, I reclined on my office chair. What was her reaction to that? About what you would anticipate? Began yelling that we were all against her, how no one is aware of how difficult her life is. He chuckled grimly. I suppose. At last, karma caught up with her. David delivered the much-anticipated news 2 weeks later. They went to live with their parents. Each and every one. Sarah, James, the kids, and the baby. On the way. Dad is making another bedroom out of his workshop. What are Dad and Mom doing about it? Do you recall how tranquil retirement was meant to be? These days, they work as ATMs and babysitters full-time. While Sarah heals, Mom is taking care of the children, which reportedly means she spends the whole day browsing on her phone. To pay for their bills, Dad is taking money out of his pension. I gave a head shake. They made their pick. David went on. Mom stopped by my place yesterday. I was wondering if I may speak with you about lending a hand. Claimed to be overburdened. They probably are. Mom unexpectedly knocked on my door the next day. I nearly failed to identify her. She appeared older and more worn out than just physically. Please. Before I could say a word, she began. Now, just listen. I interrupted her. You pay attention. You picked all of it. You decided to treat Sarah. Run. When she deceived me, you decided to stand by her side. You elected to let them move in. These are your options, Mama. Cohabitate with them. And I'll contact the cops if you come to my door once more. Do we understand? I interrupted her once more as she began to speak. Remember that this was your decision the next time you feel overburdened. Instead of choosing the one who always put out effort and acted morally, you went with the one who betrayed her sister. Live with it now. I closed the door on her protestations and banned her phone. Apart from my brothers, this was the final family number I needed to block. Marcus, the man I had been dating for a few months, joined me for dinner that evening. He knew my tale, knew about the betrayal and the consequences. He had never hurried or pushed. Simply pay attention and comprehend. He leaned across the table and held my hand after I updated him on the most recent family happenings. You're not always born into a family. It depends on who you select. I returned his grip while reflecting about my brother's support, Marcus's understanding of me, and the life I had created for myself. Ultimately, my family had not been taken by Sarah. She just assisted me in determining which elements were valuable. This weekend, my brothers are coming over. I informed him. Do you want to come along? His smile was sufficient response, and I was genuinely content with who I was and where I was for the first time in a long time. I no longer cared about the drama unfolding at my parents' house. I had my own happiness to preserve, my own family to raise, and my own life to enjoy. Story 3. You should see your face when you attempt to narrate a story, honey. As Matthew's words echoed throughout our living room, our assembled guests began to snicker. She rambles on and on, without ever getting to the point. It's similar to witnessing someone attempt blindfolded parallel parking. Familiar laughter filled the room, burning my cheeks. I tightened my hold on my wine glass and forced myself to smile, a smile I had rehearsed for the previous 5 years of our marriage. Inside, something broke. At 32, I'm Tasha Reynolds, and I'm sick of being the target of my husband's jokes. I oversee a team of 15 employees and manage multi-million-dollar campaigns as a marketing executive for one of Houston's leading companies. But at home, I'm merely Matthew's favorite target. The focus of his never-ending jokes about everything, from my appearance to my food. Tonight was meant to be a simple dinner with friends, but like every previous social occasion, it had evolved into the Matthew show. He was in rare form, entertaining our guests with story after story, each one designed to make me look foolish. When I attempted to announce that I had recently been promoted at work, he interrupted by saying that I most likely dozed off during the meeting where they made the announcement. I could sleep through an earthquake after all. More steps, more laughs. But really, he kept putting his arm around my shoulders in the same possessive manner. At work, you should see her attempt to deliver presentations. Do you recall the day you contacted me in tears because you couldn't remember the name of the client? That never occurred. But Matthew had a knack of making up things that sounded just convincing enough, incorporating nuggets of truth into his lies, even if I occasionally doubted my own recollections. And always when I tried to defend myself, he'd just smile that condescending smile and say, "Relax. It's merely a joke." I watched him holding court in our living room, so confident, so sure of his power over me in this audience. He was unaware, however, that I had finally had enough. My throat was burning with his greatest secret, the one he had pleaded with me to remain silent about, while I sat there and observed his performance. A perilous lucidity descended over me. Perhaps it was time for a truly humorous story to be told to everyone. Matthew's jokes looked innocuous enough at first. We met at a company party where I was representing my marketing firm. He was affable, accomplished, and his taunts about dropping my drink felt light-hearted rather than mean. "You're adorable when you're flustered," he remarked, helping me clean up. I thought he was being flirtatious. The changes were so subtle at first. A joke here and there about my terrible sense of direction in front of his friends, comments about how I couldn't dress myself without his help. As if to make up for the hurt of his remarks, he would always follow up with lavish presents and beautiful gestures. I had always believed in my own skills. Alex, my supervisor, used to compliment my presenting abilities and quick wit. But somewhere along the line, Matthew's constant jokes started seeping into my consciousness. I began second-guessing myself in meetings. I could hear his teasing voice in my mind. Our wedding day should have been a warning. During his speech, he had the whole room laughing at stories about my clumsiness and forgetfulness. My father looked uneasy, but everyone else appeared to think it amusing. I convinced myself that it was simply Matthew's humorous method of showing his love. The intimacy issues started about 2 years ago. At first, Matthew blamed job stress, then my neediness. Something changed in him when we eventually saw a doctor and found out about his impotence. The jokes increased in frequency and severity. He seemed to need to undermine me in order to elevate himself. "Keep it a secret." Following the diagnosis, he had pleaded, "This remains private between us." Even when his public humiliation of me worsened, I had accepted because I wanted to keep him safe. I didn't tell anyone about him. Isn't that what a decent wife does? Last week, I overheard him on the phone with his friend Brad, making up stories about how I was chilly and hard to please. As I heard him turn our personal conflicts into yet another chance to make fun of me, my fury began to boil. I've shrunk for the past 5 years of my life to keep from being the subject of his next joke. I've been making up laughter while dying inside for 5 years. He kept his secrets for 5 years while revealing to the public all of my imperfections, real and imaginary. Observing the individuals in our living room who have been amused by his jokes for years, I wonder whether they'd still find him so entertaining if they knew the reality. And here's the greatest part. Matthew's voice rose dramatically as he spoke. In fact, Tasha attempted to prepare a romantic meal last week. It should have burned to a crisp smoke all around you. She has a crisis even when she boils water. My skin felt like needles from the laughing. The reality was, I'd spent hours cooking that supper, attempting to create a space for us to talk about our concerns. Only because I was preoccupied with a call from Matthew, informing me that he would be late again, did the smoke occur. Jennifer, Brad's wife, leaned forward, holding a wine glass. She tries, at least. "Matt, how recently have you prepared any food?" I felt a twinge of appreciation, but Matthew snuffed it out right away. "Oh, I see to it that she's content in various ways." He gave me a knowing glance and grinned. "Yes, honey." There was provocative laughing throughout the room. As I watched Matthew revel in their response, my face began to heat. He was well aware of his actions, implying a lie in order to deflect criticism on his own shortcomings. Actually, I opened my mouth to say something, but Matthew interrupted. "Be careful now, my love. We don't want you to seem foolish once more." Although he spoke in a light, even fun tone, there was a caution in his eyes. "Do you recall trying to share that story about your client meeting at the Stephens party last month?" "It wasn't." I gave it another go. "Do you see what I mean?" Matthew cut in, speaking to our companions. "Sometimes she's so perplexed. I'm glad she has me to correct her." Brad and the others laughed, but I saw Jennifer observing me warily. The space was oppressive. Years of heaped shame pushing down on my chest. Then Matthew struck the last blow. "What's funny, do you?" Now he was enjoying the attention and was on a roll. "In fact, Tasha recommended that we begin attempting to conceive shortly." "Is it possible?" "She can barely take care of herself." There was silence in the room. Everyone knew we'd been married 5 years without children. A few uncomfortable glances were exchanged. "I mean, let's be honest," Matthew continued, oblivious to the tension. "Some folks simply aren't suited for parenthood. Yes, honey." In that instant, something inside of me solidified. I had guarded his secret all these years, out of affection, due to loyalty, out of a misplaced sense of duty as a wife. I had put up with the jests, the derision, and the continual eroding of my self-esteem. While he was ripping me down to build himself up, I had grinned through the humiliation. However, he portrays himself as the better spouse while degrading me by using our personal conflicts. No more. I laid my wine glass down carefully, my hand stable for the first time all evening. The reality about our childless marriage was going to become tonight's entertainment. Matthew. My voice was fairly steady as I spoke. Maybe you should tell them about your doctor's appointment last year. The grin on his face stopped. Sweetheart, you're drunk. You might want to drink some water. I'm not intoxicated, I'm thinking clearly actually. In years, for the first time. I looked over at our companions. For once, would you want to hear a humorous story? Matthew stood up abruptly. Who requires a refill? Brad? Jennifer? There was a hint of panic in his voice. Sit down, Matthew. Silently, I said. You recall how much you like story time? It became tense in the room. Our pals looked at each other. Matthew's expression clouded as he became aware that his typical strategies were failing, and he sensed the change in dynamics. It's too much wine for Tasha. In an attempt to restore control, he declared, she gets emotional when she drinks. Do you recall when she was at the Christmas party? When I what? I interrupted when I saw you making up lies about our sex life to your buddies. Or when I heard you accuse me of being the reason we don't have kids. Jennifer put down her glass of wine. Perhaps you should let her talk, Matt. Oh, there's nothing to say. Matthew laughed, but it sounded forced. Tasha is being overly dramatic. Women are like that occasionally. When you make fun of my cooking, do I become dramatic? My voice, my work, and my looks were all becoming more powerful. Or am I exaggerating the actual reason we are childless? The color fled from Matthew's face. He walked over to me and grabbed my arm. Let's discuss this in private, honey. I nearly gave in for a second to the old impulse to conceal his secret and to keep him safe. His expression softened, as if he could see my hesitation. I apologize if my jokes were too offensive, he said in a soft voice. I love you, you know that. Let us simply savor the remainder of the evening. Brad nodded, encouragingly. Matt is just playing around, so hurry up, Tasha. He doesn't mean anything by it. I almost believed it. I nearly reverted to my pretended and smiling routine. Now Matthew's hand was on my shoulder, giving it a little squeeze. A warning disguised as affection. Remember what we talked about? Just loud enough for me to hear, he whispered. Some things should be secret. That's when I saw it clearly, the deception concealed by the worry, the danger behind the warmth. He had humiliated me for years by using my silence as an excuse. My discretion had become his weapon. You're correct, Matthew, I responded, rising up. Some things should be secret, like your jokes regarding our sex lives, particularly since... I stopped and looked into his eyes. How long has it been since we had one? He hissed at Tasha. Don't. What's the matter? I assumed you enjoyed jokes. I looked at our pals. Do you want to hear a hilarious story? For 2 years, my spouse has been. Matthew threw his wine glass over as he pushed forward. This is no longer amusing. No, I agreed, moving back. It wasn't. Because we're all telling amusing tales. Jennifer quickly spoke out, her voice quivering slightly. Matt, perhaps we should discuss what you told Brad last week. Matthew's head jerked in her direction. What? How about? Tasha's chilly. How? She's the reason you can't. Meaningfully, Jennifer's words drifted off. The room grew eerily silent. I looked at Brad, who was now rather interested in his shoes, and then at Jennifer. It's my fault. You've been telling everyone. I hardly spoke above a whisper. Sweetheart, they are misinterpreting. Matthew stumbled. I just wanted to vent to Brad. You've heard of man talk. Jennifer's voice lifted. You've been claiming that your wife is flawed in front of everyone at the club. Something you are unable to perform because of her. That she is. Quit talking, Matthew yelled, making everyone jump. You don't know what you're talking about. Jennifer wasn't done, though. I heard you at Susan's party, too, making comments about how Tasha probably couldn't please any male. How fortunate she is to have you, since nobody else would desire such a... That's sufficient. Matthew was furious, and his face was crimson. My hands trembled, but not because of terror. I had been loyal and had maintained his secret all these time. He had been making fun of me and spreading false information about me, not only at our house, but all over. Actually, I began breaking the tension with my voice. It is Insufficient, not nearly enough. I looked across to our companions. Are you curious as to why we don't actually have any kids? Why? Matthew laughs about our sexual lives, but he never discusses it. Why he's so desperate to make me look inadequate. Please, Tasha. At last, Matthew's haughtiness gave way, and he begged. Consider what you are doing. It has been on my mind for the past 2 years. I've thought about it every time. You publicly made fun of me. Every time you made me feel tiny. Every time you blamed me for our troubles. I thought about it. I looked around the room at these folks who had laughed at his jokes for years. My spouse has been impotent for the past 2 years. Complete erectile dysfunction. That's why we don't have children. That's why he fabricates lies about my deficiencies. He must thus reject me in front of everyone in order to conceal his personal problems. The stillness was terrible. Matthew stood transfixed, his face ashen. The doctor stated it was likely psychological. With a calm voice, I went on to recommend treatment, but Matthew rejected it, claiming he didn't require assistance. He chose to use me as a punchline, as a coping mechanism instead. You made a pledge. Matthew's voice broke as he whispered, You said you wouldn't tell. You also swear to respect and adore me, I answered. We're both let down, I suppose. Brad awkwardly cleared his throat. Jennifer's displeasure was evident as she gazed at Matthew. Without making eye contact, the others moved about in their chairs. We've never done that before in our marriage. Matthew lacked a cunning retort or a mean joke to divert attention. He simply stood there, humiliating and exposing me in the same way that he had done so for years. When his secret was revealed, the balance of power had changed irrevocably. I had released myself from its burden. Everyone would now be aware of the insecurity that motivated his urge to make fun of me and the reality behind his nasty humor. Everything is ruined by you, Matthew spoke softly. Risky. Do you find this amusing? Do you believe that making fun of me would improve you? I don't find humiliation amusing at all, Matthew. That is how we vary from one another. Then, in a frantic attempt to save his reputation, he appealed to our buddies. She's telling lies. She is jealous of my success and is attempting to make me look bad. She gets, give up. Brad spoke firmly. Simply stop. Matt, we've all seen how you treat her. Oh, so now you're taking her side? Matthew laughed bitterly. After all the times you laughed at my jokes, after everything I told you about her, Jennifer interrupted for precisely that reason. The remarks you made towards Tasha, they were brutal. We should have said something sooner. Anger twisted Matthew's face. You want cruel? All right. His disguise was gone and he turned to face me. Tell them about the promotion you're so proud of. Inform them of your true method. My heart stopped. His jokes had never gone beyond this one line. My profession. Talk to them about your boss's late nights, he continued, his voice dripping with hatred. Tell them why you truly were selected over other qualified prospects. There was silence in the room. This was no longer a joke. In fact, this was character assassination. Something fresh came from the doorway. I am able to inform them about the promotion. They all turned to find my boss, Alex, standing there. I didn't realize she was dropping off some contracts later. After entering the room long enough to hear you attempt to ruin your wife's reputation in order to save your own, Alex remarked. I've been standing here for a while. Matthew's expression turned pallid. This is a personal issue. Matthew, nothing is private with you. That's your thing, right? Making it all public? Alex looked around the room. Because Tasha secured the Peterson account on her own, she was promoted. She stayed late working on the pitch. Indeed, with our whole group. I know because I was there every night. You don't have to, Alex. I got started. I do indeed. She interrupted me. Because of him, I've seen you deteriorate over the years. No more. She turned to face Matthew. Your wife does a fantastic job at her profession. She deserved all that she possesses. You are the only one in this marriage who is riding on the coattails of others. There were no pals left in the room as Matthew looked around. He became ugly-faced. You consider yourself powerful because of this? My buddies turned against me when he spit at me, revealing personal health concerns. You're pathetic. I picked up my handbag and got to my feet. Not at all, Matthew. What's pitiful is raising yourself up by putting others down. Blaming your wife for your shortcomings is pitiful. It's pitiful to believe that being harsh gives you power. I look at our visitors. I appreciate you coming. The celebration is probably ended. People started to grab their belongings. Matthew tried one final time. If you go now, there's no use in returning. At the staircase, I stopped. You spoke anything amusing for the first time that evening. Because trust me, Matthew, I won't. Word got throughout our social circle quite fast. Everyone was aware of Matthew's behavior within a week. In addition to his health problems, he had mistreated me for years. As individuals started to share their own accounts of his bullying at the country club, where he had enjoyed holding court with his humor, his carefully constructed image as the endearing jokester fell apart, people started avoiding his table. When he attempted to make fun of other people, his jokes failed and were received with awkward silence rather than laughter. Even his closest friends avoided him, especially after Jennifer revealed more of his heinous falsehoods. At his company's yearly dinner, the ultimate blow was delivered. Forgetting that I was no longer his punching bag, Matthew attempted to recite one of his amusing tales about me. There was a voice among the throng. Will this be as true as the rest of your stories? Matt? Snickers broke out in the room, not at his joke, but at him. Feeling embarrassed, he stormed out. I later learned that he had gotten wasted at a pub and was tirading about how I had betrayed his confidence and destroyed his life. The issue with confidence, however, is this. Tearing people down is not the path to true confidence. I had to lose my marriage before I could find mine. However, I felt like I could finally breathe again after packing my belongings and moving into my new flat. Matthew attempted to joke about my moving boxes the last time I saw him. No one chuckled. When everyone can see cruelty for what it truly is, it turns out that it's not that hilarious. After 6 months, I could hardly recognize my life as it was. At work, my promotion opened up even more chances, and I finally felt comfortable taking them on without Matthew's incessant undercutting. Instead of making fun of my accomplishments, Alex became a personal friend and not simply my boss. I also kept in contact with Jennifer. A month after our dinner party, she filed for divorce from Brad, claiming that my stance given her the confidence to confront her own problematic marriage. We now frequently get together for coffee and laugh over genuinely humorous topics. The divorce process was shockingly straightforward. Matthew accepted my requirements without question because he was terrified of being humiliated anymore. It was his last joke effort. We never had children, but at least now everyone understands why. Fell flat when my lawyer just looked him down. I met him at a restaurant last week. He was eating by himself while attempting to engage the waitress with his typical banter. She wasn't giggling. As I passed his table, he cried out, "Tasha, you still can't handle a joke." I paused and pivoted. "Oh, Matthew, I can take a joke. It was only recently that I recognized you as one." I heard something I had never heard in our marriage as I was leaving. Matthew remained silent. No retort, no derisive laughter, simply accepting his new situation in silence. I see someone who has grown tired of being the target of nasty jokes from others when I look in the mirror these days. I see someone who has regained her strength, her voice, and her smile. It turns out that exposing a bully isn't the only kind of retaliation. It's taking back your happiness.